Hello, everyone. My name is Todd Fernandez with Climate Crisis Policy, and I'll be your host today. Thank you all for coming. And we have a big agenda. I just wanted to start off by looking at the carbon clock again with everyone. As you can see here, the 1.5 degree scenario says 6 years, 9 months. If you click on 2 point, it takes it to 24 years. I keep coming back to this every day of my life because we're killing ourselves, frankly, for this effort, and it's for a reason. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for this clock. And so when I started 5 years ago in this movement, it was 15, now it's down to less than 7. So it's really shocking, frankly. And between 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius, there are over 15 tipping points which come into play. And these are tipping points like reversal of ocean currents, complete meltdown of ice sheets and things like this. So we're at the crunch zone. And I'm not trying to give anyone a headache that you don't already have. But this is the reason why we need to escalate and we need to get more focused. And we need a demand and we need action this year. And then, there's a lot of movement in the right direction, of course, and that's all good. But from whatever policies get put forward by the administration or other folks, we have to ask one question. What is the greenhouse gas reduction from this proposed legislation? What is that projected to be? If somebody is selling you a piece of legislation without talking about the greenhouse gas reduction scenarios, they're giving you a little razzle-dazzle. Razzle-dazzle, you know that song? And so we need to get to that question. That's why we're now talking about Earth Bill 1, Stop Our Pollution, with a series of mandates. We're going to go into that a little bit later again, because those mandates on that timeline will give very predictable greenhouse gas reductions. And you're going to hear a lot about this going forward. Soon we'll have a one-pager for that bill with the outline and the definitions. We're making really good progress on definitions in the various sectors. So more on that later in the conversation today. Our emphasis today is really about adopted district. And that's going exceptionally well. You're going to hear all the details about it later again. And we're just going to dive into it again and figure out which states we need people in, what our next steps are in terms of setting up meetings and building our local teams. There's nothing really more important than that, because it takes so much time to build that infrastructure and get those alliances in line and set up those meetings. You know how it is. So you'll be hearing a lot about that today. We'll also touch briefly on the direct action and youth networks that are going strong now and meeting. And just FYI, Youth for Nature, Fridays for Future, and 0 Hour are now finally linked in communication, which was no small feat. And we're also having meetings with direct action focus about having those meetings on a nationwide level, and some planning is already in the works. Save the date, July 2nd. I think Christina C. from Extinction Rebellion will be with us today. We're also going to have an art piece from Leslie, and Felice Stadler will be here from EDF later in the call, like she was previously, to talk about the current thing and the April recess organizing. We're going to zero in a little bit on our network principles and agreements, because we need to get to the bottom of that. For April was the goal to be launched. So we really need you to ask your groups to review these things and see if we're getting close to something that folks could sign on to. And with that, we're going to go ahead and switch to our main presenter today. And I'm going to stop sharing and welcome Rob Bramlish from the Americans for Clean Energy Grid and a variety of other hats he wears. I couldn't be more excited to talk about Rob. This shows you the power of our electricity policy sector, which is hard at work finding the organizations that are actually going to build the renewables, because that's our quest in that team. We're looking for the plans, where we're going to build what, who's going to be the general contractor for the country, what's the timeline, how is this going to get done on a date certain, so we can measure this, again. And so finding our team networked our way somehow to Rob, I forget how. And it was just so exciting. And I finally got to talk to him yesterday and I was like, ding, 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 we find our way to the right people who are gonna talk about building this stuff. So with that introduction, I'll let Rob introduce himself better. Thank you for being here and welcome. Take it away.
Thank you, Todd. I really appreciate your timeline there on the spinning globe. That helps a lot, and I appreciate everybody's enthusiasm for this issue, and especially the distinction between feel-good initiatives and get a lot of carbon reduction initiatives. And my personal journey was I started at the World Resources Institute, first job out of college, and I was a fact checker for the climate change report of the World Resources Report, and I was reading about ocean currents back in 1991, and that was my aha moment. And so really ever since, I've been working on what I viewed to be the biggest opportunity for change was the electricity sector, because I saw renewable energy getting cheaper, and it looked like we could pretty significantly decarbonize the power sector. And so we've been working on that. It took a lot longer than I had hoped, but we're making a lot of progress now. And now it looks to me the pathway to be towards large scale to get the most emissions reductions are still in the power sector, but then using electric power to propel our transportation sector with electric vehicles, and then also to heat our buildings and homes with electric heat pumps. And that right there, you can get it over half of the emissions reductions we need. Other sectors are harder, but these are relatively easy, so we need to go big and go fast. Let me see if I can share my screen. I think I need that enabled for me. I was just going to show a couple slides. Looks like it's not there yet.
Okay, it should work now. Sorry about that, Bob.
No problem. Let me just find it.
While he's looking, I'll just make this opportunity to thank Greg Wagner. I don't think all of you have any idea what he does for this organizing. So anyway, everyone send love and gratitude to Greg.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Let's see. This screen sharing is always a little bit easier said than done.
Speaking of screens, I like your background screen of the Netherlands.
Yeah,
And
well,
all
this
the
is my
tulips and vegetables growing.
I appreciate that. This is my wind energy is beautiful message. We've been living it with the landscape for years and years, and people like it just fine. So can you see now my screen? Are we showing up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Go ahead to go into presentation mode if you could.
How's that?
Perfect.
All right, so first just a couple semi-technical slides and then some policy recommendations. In the power sector, we can operate almost all of the power system on renewable energy. To really understand this, you have to look at slides like this, which this shows each red blotch is a day, and the red blotches are solar energy that comes on obviously in the daytime, and then when there's no red, that means that's nighttime. So this is trying to meet all electricity load in all hours, and of course the wind is not always blowing and the sun is not always shining. So then you start looking at the orange blobs. That's storage. We have battery energy storage that's very cheap now, but that too can't do everything. So if you add up the wind in the green and the storage in the orange and the solar in the red on slides like this, and even account for the fact that the grayish blue on the top is excess renewable energy that you just have to spill, you just have to waste it. You can get 70, 80, or 90% of your energy from renewables. The gray at the bottom is what we have to rely on, some type of what we call flexible, firm sources. Currently, those are probably natural gas plants, but in the future, we can figure out how to take the carbon out of that with carbon capture, or find other forms of long duration storage, longer than the batteries, because we're going to need it for multi-day periods. So, but at any rate, the power sector is a very complicated sector because supply has to meet demand every second of every day, all through the year. So this suggests a couple things that will lead us into policy. Number one, to make that work, you have to move very large amounts of power back and forth across regions. If you look at the bottom left there, this is a National Renewable Energy Laboratory study of the interconnections. We actually have 3 separate grids in the country: the East, the West, and Texas is on its own. I think Texas regrets somewhat being on its own after the blackouts they had recently, because in the upper Midwest, they were importing 13 gigawatts. Texas could only do 1/15 that amount of import when they had the same cold weather pattern back in February. But at any rate, we need to start moving very large amounts of power, and that macro grid there shown in the black lines is a way to do it. You know, otherwise, and the reason that makes sense is because the wind farm that you might be near, if you go 300 or 400 miles away, the next wind farm over, its output is basically not correlated with the first one. So the more you spread it out across different areas, as the saying goes, the wind's always blowing somewhere. And with solar, you know, if it's cloudy in one place, it's probably not cloudy a few states away. And of course, you connect multiple time zones, you lengthen solar output by a couple hours. So you're interconnecting all the wind, solar, and geothermal and everything from multiple areas, but you have to do it with a lot of transmission. And this is how we got here in terms of, we've got over 100 gigawatts of wind in the country, which has been great, most just in the last 5 years. But we got here by building proactive transmission. These are the names of some of these proactive transmission efforts that I've been involved with in my role with the wind industry for the last 10 or 15 years. But all of this transmission, like the MISO MVP in the upper Midwest, that was a sort of proactive transmission planning process. They identified the resource areas and connected it to load. So almost half of our current wind energy is directly attributable to some of these efforts. It doesn't always have to be new rights of way. We have a lot of rights of way. We have highway and rail. We have existing utility rights of way. We can upgrade the capacity on those rights of way. So that then leads into the priorities, and Todd and I discussed some of this yesterday. I think the place I would start, and this is based in part on my experience when I used to lead the wind industry's state and federal policy work. We were involved in passing 30 or so renewable portfolio standards around the country. And those are really helpful. And these days, most people talk about clean energy standard instead of renewable portfolio standard, and that's fine. Just call it carbon free. I think that can include nuclear and carbon capture and other things, and that brings more bipartisan engagement, and the point is to reduce carbon, so that works well. So the challenge right now in Washington, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. I used to lead lobbying for the wind industry. I don't do so much of this broader energy policy legislative work anymore. I focus on transmission and the grids, but I'm aware that there are discussions of a clean energy standard, and the key is just the highest percent you can get by the soonest date you can get. I mean, 100% by 2030, sure. You know, and let's get what we can get through. Essentially, it's what we can get through Senator Manchin these days. A carbon price, if you know more members come around to that, that can accomplish the same thing. Carbon tax or any type of dividend type of proposal. That can work. Essentially, whatever can get through the Senate, and specifically whatever can get through the reconciliation process, which you can do with 30 Democratic votes. And that basically relates to funding items. So direct spending that I think are non-discretionary, direct spending or tax credits can get through that process. So I would, you know, start with that. EPA regulations, I think, are important. That's something I think the Biden administration will do as well as they can. Don't necessarily need to lobby so hard for that. Tax credits are really important. There is a proposal, probably hasn't gotten too much public discussion, but the Senate Finance Committee is looking at a technology neutral tax credit, long-term extension of wind, solar, and other tax credits, but basically opening up so anything that's carbon free, I think, would get the credit. Making them long-term is really important. Businesses love to have the certainty. Todd, we can talk about in the Q&A exactly, you know, who are the general contractors, who are the companies, who are the entities who, you know, build different aspects of it. But I think regardless of all that, the things that move clean energy forward are the, you know, setting the target, and then tax credits, not just for the clean carbon-free generation, but the enabling technology. So storage and transmission, as I tried to tee up with the previous slides, both energy storage and transmission. For the physicists in the group, you know, you need to move power across time and across space. You need to do both. And storage and transmission enable you to do that, which allows for a high renewable energy-based grid. And then specifically on transmission, along with the tax credit, heck, if you want to be ambitious, just say build the darn macro grid. And you could even say the Pentagon should build it because there's national security at stake, and they could put it all underground. So, you know, that might cost something on the order of $200 billion, or maybe the government pays a third of that and have the private sector and utilities through their own cost recovery mechanisms pick up the remainder of the tab. So that could work. The Clean Future Act in the House has some transmission provisions. There are sections 211 to 218. They are good. I think they should be supportive. They should also probably be strengthened. They say things like on transmission, they say FERC should have hold a conference to discuss, you know, the issue. Well, I mean, conferences are nice, but we need to move forward. So I would say go further. Senator Heinrich has an interregional planning bill that is more directive to FERC. And I would even go broader than that and actually give FERC more authority to direct transmission rather than its relatively weak authority right now, which is probably a longer conversation, but strengthening FERC planning authority. People on the House and Senate know what that means. So that's what I would offer to you on policy and the reasons for it in the power sector. So Todd, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Rob. It's just very exciting to hear that we're in, let me just see here if we are within reach of these goals. So that's really a fundamental question going into this, is whether we're being even remotely realistic with our mandates bill approach. And it sounds like we're definitely in the ballpark. And you and others have affirmed that the clean energy standards, those mandates are what will drive the procurement, which will drive the building. You mentioned, you know, I talked to you too. I was like, we're still looking for that back of the envelope explanation of how much we need to build how many thousand solar farms, how many thousands of wind turbine farms, what is the back of the envelope picture of how much we need to build? And do we have that mapped out? And I know when I was asking that question, you also said, well, the supply will be, the generation of all those supplies will be sort of sprinkled around. So it's not like we're going to build huge industrial solar farms, in the middle of the desert and necessarily, but I take it there's a combination for that. And more importantly, who is overseeing, the implementation of all, who could and oversee? We talked about the military building the grid, but don't we need a general contractor who's going to be overseeing the national effort to build renewables at scale fast enough? And so who's thinking about that? And is there a written plan?
Sure. So first, on how much we need to build, I just put in the chat a report I recommend from my alma mater, the Berkeley Policy School, and Grid Lab. It's called the 2035 report, and it is, I think, 90% decarbonization by 2035. But it talks about, it shows the numbers on how much we need to build by when to achieve that goal. And if you want to speed it up to 2030, you can, increase it by a third. It's about 40 gigawatts of wind and solar each year, I believe, which is, more than we're doing. My sense is we've got to almost double the annual deployments, and we've had pretty good annual deployments even in the Trump years. But that'll give you a good sense of the trajectory. In terms of who builds it, the electric generation sector in the country, which is almost all now wind, solar, and storage, a little bit of geothermal and hydro, is just hundreds and hundreds of independent businesses. And they're doing fine. They can build, they want to build, all they need is customers. And the customers tend to be utilities. So that's why Clean Energy Standard, Renewable Portfolio Standards work so well, because those basically tell the utilities. And just think of whoever you pay your electric bill to, whoever that entity is, would be required by a Clean Energy Standard to get X% of their energy that they serve you with from carbon-free sources, and that then works. So then that utility goes out and buys it. They might build it and own it themselves, depending on your state. We have very different market structures in different states of the country. But the point is, whoever is that provider has to go out and get it or build it, and they can go do that.
Mm-hmm. All right, I hear that answer, and sounds like there's the capacity to build, the willingness to build. I'm just still questioning leaving it to 50 different systems, and then hoping it all comes together. So let's keep talking about that. I'm looking for the general contractor, whether it's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I don't care if it's the military personally, but whoever, it could be a new entity, probably not FERC, given its history and whatnot. It needs to have eminent domain power, permitting power that transcends local permitting authorities probably. It needs to have some real power, and then money, of course. But it sounds like the money can come from the private sector fulfillment of these things through these solar contracts. So it's more like a general contractor role, it seems like. Well, let's see. It's already 12:30, so I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. I think we'll just have to keep asking questions, through the electric sector. I don't see anything to pop out of me. But thank you so much, Robert. It's very exciting to know that the potential, the possibility of actually doing this to save ourselves is there. So that's so exciting when you're looking to solve a problem. We're not trying to come up with new technology to fly to the moon. We're just trying to build a few things and connect them with some wires. I know it's more complicated than that on the ground, but it's, to me, as a novice, this looks doable. We just got to, everyone grab your wrench and let's get out there. So anyway, you get the idea. If we made this a collective effort, it sounds like we are within range of accomplishing a minor miracle. So, all right, Rob, thank you so much. We'll stay in touch, and we're eager to get your association's, ideas or feedback on this idea of an Earth Bill 1. Again, it's designed to mobilize the activists to bring some outside pressure to make sure all this happens. We didn't mention that 6 of these state level nonprofits that work in this arena are urging the Biden administration on a 100% clean energy standard to make that firm. And we didn't touch on the enforcement, but we did, Rob and I talked about it. This tax deduction, utilities do take taxes. There are hooks through that arena, it sounded like, right, Rob?
Great, and happy to stay in touch. I'll sign off now, but a lot of great questions in the chat I wish I could get to. Definitely hydrogen is important. Heat pumps are important. There's a lot of other things we didn't get to today.
Well, if you'd like to answer anything in the chat, by all means do. And everyone who's writing in the chat using my name, stop impersonating me.
All right, I got to sign off. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Rob. Thanks for everything. Okay, let's have Leslie come up next and give us a breather from all that heavy talk and take us into an art piece that she created and share with us. I believe Christine is going to share her screen to show the piece. Oh, and there we have it. Leslie?
I'll go ahead then. We have an art committee that's attached to this effort, and we feel that it's something that, a little break with your visual and your emotional skills is really important. And I created this piece. It's off a copper etching, and it depicts, it's called The Conversation. And it's 2 ravens talking to each other. And the point of this whole thing is to remind us that wetlands are really important. I don't know if you can see it, but in the lower left-hand corner, sort of center left, is the nymph of the adult dragonfly. And so the adult dragonfly is up flying there too. So it's a complicated and important part of our Earth's system to cleanse the water and to provide backstops for big torrential floods and so forth. So it's something that I like to do. I am a printmaker. Haven't been doing that much in this pandemic, but I'll be continuing as soon as we get a little bit clear here. And I think it's important to be able to express ourselves in our creative arenas as well as our intellectual. I'm always in the intellectual arena, and this gives a little bit broader expression for all of us who are having to, slog through all of the laws and try to make changes, which is extremely important. I'm really glad that we had this presentation on the grid this morning, because I'm going to my state legislature after I leave here to do some lobbying. So we have a lobby day. So that's what we're working on in Oregon. We're really trying to up the game. And I agree with you, Todd, that connection is really important. And who is going to make that connection between states? I'm getting a little off topic, but I hope you enjoy this print. And we have other people who will be sharing as well. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to show my creative work.
Thank you so much, Leslie. And thank you to the art team for bringing these moments of, levity. I'm not sure if it's levity. These are serious pieces too, and I'm in Puerto Rico where there are lots of wetlands, and I was in awe of their interconnected, it's like trees that are grabbing through the water at the earth to hold everything together. It's really unbelievable. All right, so let's see what's next on the agenda. I believe next up is the one, the only, the foundation of it all, Greg Wagner, who's going to give us an update on the adopted district effort and all the great numbers there. Greg, take it away.
All right, thanks, Todd. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give you some numbers of where I think we are right now, and we're making great progress since our last meeting. We have 75 districts represented, and 16 of those are Republican and 59 are Democrat. We were looking to target particular states, Texas, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Massachusetts, Maine, and West Virginia, and we have representation in all of those states except for West Virginia. So if there's any West Virginians out there, you can put yourself in the chat that you're interested in adopting a district in West Virginia. Todd, would you be able to put the sign up form in the chat?
I sure will.
Okay, and let's see. We have 109 leads and supporters in 27 states. That's great. What else did I want to tell you? I just want to tell you what my intention is now that I'm trying to keep track of everything. So part of my job is to keep track of all of this and keep track of all of you. And as this grows, there's going to be more and more of you. And so it's a big job. I will do my best to keep track of you. And if you reach out to me and I don't respond, just bother me again. You know, I've got a constant stream of emails coming in, and I think you all know how easy it is to lose track of those and find one in the bottom of a pile. I want to be sure to get you all connected to each other, especially if you're nearby and you're in the same state and same district. We have some state leads, but not in every state. And so we're also looking for people to lead in their districts and lead in their states. So that's also something that you can let me know that you might be interested in. You'd just be like the point person, pulling those people, keeping that group organized and working together. So, you know, the intention is, you know, not to have anybody doing this alone and to do this in groups and do this together. I also want to make sure that you have the tools you need and the information you need when you end up having your meetings. And that's constantly changing, and we're updating that information right now. You know, Todd, I know, is working on fixing some things and updating some things. What else to tell you? I think that's basically all I have to say for the time being. I just would really appreciate if you're interested. I encourage you to sign up to adopt your district and to join this effort. It's the boots on the ground part of this project, and it's really crucial. You know, we have the policies, and let's get our feet on the ground and see what we can push for. So thanks, everyone.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Greg, for this and for everything, all the list work, all the Zoom management. Yes, so this is wonderful. I was going to screen share real quick and just take you back into our website, and so you can all see the adopted district page has its own page on the website now. Under, if you look at the menu, you'll see Earth Bill Network, the bill package, adopted district. Here's the adopted district page, and it invites everyone to join. It has a map, thanks to Sarah, of where we all are. It has all the information on all the pieces of materials you need. The tool package has been updated. The toolkit, rather, has been updated. So I just finished those updates yesterday. It still has 3 different you know, folders in there. One is to get started, one is about the bill package, one is additional steps. So hopefully that's not too confusing. And then there's also a 1-pager in there that was created. I should pull it up and show you. Well, that's okay. There's a 1-pager that the New York team pulled together, and that has sort of an overview of resources. There are upcoming meetings with Senator Gillibrand, Representative Castor, Representative Espaillat. Oh, I should scroll down here so you could see, you know, we're starting, there's all the groups that have different folks, and you have to scroll this down. It's a little bit to find us, but we're in here. Here we're all listed. We're only 100 out of 400, so we still have a ways to go, obviously. Greg mentioned West Virginia. Are there any other states where we don't have anybody that we should try to get folks today to sign up? The form to volunteer is right there, so you can share this. The youth adopted district is listed as well. Youth team right here, Fridays for Future, and a separate form to sign up for youth. So if you have grandchildren or other high schoolers, friends, please invite them to this. And the youth are just so on top of this, it's unbelievable. You'll get to meet them at our next meeting. They'll be coming to do a presentation along with Harriet Sugarman, who's working intergenerationally with parents for the future. So you'll get the whole picture of the intergenerational organizing that's going on, an emphasis on Mother's Day. So you get an idea. We're drawing you back into Adopt a District. If you haven't done it, it's easy for now. And right now, let's invite Lavona, who's an expert in organizing lobby visits from her career, to share a few words of encouragement and direction to help us all know what next steps to take. Welcome,
Great.
Lavona.
Thank you, Todd. So Greg and Todd really just gave you a really good preview. And what I want to do is just sort of like package a few of these things. So as we kind of dig down a little bit deeper and also try to jumpstart where we don't have leads already, and kind of put some pieces together and ideas about how to do that. So I kind of think about these things with sort of 4 parts to it. So we're really forming or joining on a district, where then when you have the team formed and you're doing the research and the work that needs to be done in preparation of the meetings. And then you have the actual meeting, and then there's post-meeting activity. And I want to spend most of my time talking about forming or joining a team today, about how we can really jumpstart some of that. But just real briefly about some of the team tasks. You're going to find that information Todd was telling you about the toolkit. And when you sign up, right in the sign up form, there is the link to the toolkit, and you'll find that there, plus a couple of other things for you. So that's one place where you're going to find that toolkit. And there's going to be some information also added. The one area that's there's not a lot of information right now is about conducting your meeting. And we're going to have some videos and some resources about actually doing the meeting. What are the roles and that type of thing there. So that'll still be coming. But so on the team, the organizing your team, there's the voter research that will be done, doing some, what's the voter record? What's your member research on that? Doing some Google searches, some things like that. We've got these ideas for doing that. And then you're going to be doing some research about the staff that are, doing that work in the office. The legislative director is the person who has overall, and when we're talking about like the build package, that would be a good person to talk to. But then there are sector people who do specialize in particular types of things. So the agriculture, for example, area might be very different than the people who are doing the energy bill work. So you should do some research. Sometimes that information will be on the website. Sometimes it won't. So you might have to phone call and do a little research on that. And then of course you'll be setting up your meeting. And I think that's a whole separate meeting for us to talk about kind of how to do that. And then there's the post activities. So let's go kind of right at the beginning though. So for some of you, you might be leads, and in the email that Todd sent out, he included a list of the leads if you didn't have a chance to see that, so you can check there. And then Greg was just telling you, I've heard a couple of Q&As about this, well, I can't remember if I signed up or not. And so I would say contact Greg, to find out if you are on the list as a participant. And then also, you may not want to actually even participate in meetings. Not everybody does, but there's a way to contribute. You might be good at networking and also maybe trying to convene a group that doesn't exist. And a couple of ways to kind of going about doing that is, once you, if you can figure out, you want to be the lead, or you just want to participate, or you want to, do a little bit of all of this, or just be a convener, is to think about power mapping yourself. I don't know if you've heard those words about power mapping, but power mapping very often is the member of Congress or the policymaker, and you figure out, who's connected to them and knows them, that type of thing. So for purposes of starting an Adopt a District and finding people around you, you can kind of power map yourself. So kind of a visual, this is high-tech sharing screen, might be sort of putting yourself in the middle of this. In this case, you're the decision maker. And I like color coding. So a few of the tools that you might have available for you is to even using a bunch of colored stickies to have available, or cards to put information down, so that you can visually start to map out who your sphere of influence is. But if you think of yourself in the middle, and then kind of like a target, the next group out, you would have some direct contacts with. So those will be in your houses of worship, the organizations that you're in. Maybe you're a member of the PTA or your homeowners association, whatever those groups might be. And then one sphere outside of that are maybe occasional contacts that you might have with a business owner that you might know, etc. So you're going to kind of map out who you know and the groups that you know. But we're going to focus primarily on adopt a district in your own district, which is the most powerful thing, is where you're a stakeholder. So who are some of the the types of people where to start? So your faith community, for example. So I'm lead on the faith team, and we'll be talking about that tomorrow at our meeting. Is starting closest to people that you know, kind of like thinking about who would you invite to dinner, who would you invite to your party, to invite in to learn about this, and ask them if they'd be interested in doing this work. And they might not be, but always in terms of the networking, then ask the question of who might you direct me to? And so this is how we're really building the network. This is the Earthbill network. And so we're focusing on building our personal networks and our organizational networks here, and increasing your sphere of influence. So the process itself is only going to take you about 20 minutes. So I'm going to suggest that for a timeline of when we might want to look at here is that, Passover is coming up this week. We've got Earth Day coming up, and we have Mother's Day coming up, is that we kind of figure out, what we can do at this point in time to maybe have a goal of forming your group, and if you're a team leader, this would be kind of, reaching out to those folks in your sphere of influence that you want to invite to your picnic, maybe outside. And with COVID, we'll just call it a picnic, but to have the conversation and get them into your network. And then, so these are the folks that will also then network later. Now, we're going to be going out hopefully on a regular basis. This isn't a one and done. So you might go out on the package of bills the first time, but the next month, some people are going out monthly. It might be something else that your team decides to go out on. I suggest that you have at least 4 people in a team. 5 is actually kind of a good number, but if you're going to be going and having meetings, when you set these up, you're at the will of the member of Congress or the staff person. And even though you may give them some dates you're available, they may not. So you need a large enough pool of people to be able to do the research and actually show up at the meetings. Those are hopefully. Then you also will have people be willing to do some research. Again, there are roles that people will be playing in these, and you can work those out and use people's expertise and skill set and comfort levels. And there's a place for everybody. And so as we move forward with this, we'll focus a little bit more on what you're actually doing in terms of the meeting. There are roles, and these can rotate over time. But we'll have some online tools for you and videos that you can plug into. So Todd, any specific questions you might have for me on this? I'm not sure if that's what you had in mind.
I think that was wonderful. That's exactly what we needed. So you get it, everybody. It's step one, step one, start your power mapping, find your teams. A lot of you are experts at this. Some folks are new. We're going to try to come up with a little bit of a bifurcation between the experts and the newbies, and have some more direct support for people who are new. In the meantime, reach out to Greg or me. I'm not offering the bone up. She's dealing with a faith group, but we'll try to find. If you're an expert and you want to help guide others, that would be very welcomed help. Yes, and if you haven't adopted a district yet, please consider adopting a district. And if you could just put in the chat with your changing your name, if any of you have meetings coming up, I think that'll be exciting to see. I know some folks do. Oh, and I forgot to mention, and we're getting tight on time. April is the goal. We're not, at this stage, we're not in the middle of a full court press of any kind on April, but that is the goal, to have meetings, to get the climate bill package. Maybe we will be escalating this full court press for April. So everything takes a lot of lead time, as you know. And so please go ahead and get geared up for it. And the other thing we're thinking about, and this can be for April and maybe into May, is community meetings. So if you're not ready to have a legislative meeting yet, although that's obviously an important goal, then maybe you could have a community meeting of these folks that Lavona just described in your realm of, in your circle, or just invite all your friends over and talk about it, or, you know, on Zoom, of course, and talk about it and see who they know and get them power mapping. Because ideally we need 100 people in each congressional district ready to alternate and be ready to keep a sustained level of pressure. And then the last piece on this is just keep in mind, if you think your legislator would be an interesting person to ask as an original supporter of Earth Bill 1. And that's a very vanguard ask, frankly. And with that, I'll thank everybody. And I'm going to segue a little bit into
One last thing. Can I just say, I'm going to put something in the chat. It's a little tool, kind of did it for faith folks, but about researching, doing a little bit of research, information gathering. So there'll be a file that I'm going to put in there. And I just did this task actually this morning in 20 minutes with one of our faith team about mapping out California. And really, it can just take a short period of time, you know, and you know, he had gaps and I had some connections. And so it can be kind of a fun task as you connect people, you know, in doing this about who knows who. And also just in your neighborhood, you know, I was mentioning maybe PTA and that. I was even thinking about people, I don't know a lot of people in my neighborhood, but I do know people also who have the right signs up during the election times that I could be actually reaching out to. So get creative about what, you know, how to connect with people. So have fun with it.
Thank you, Lavona, so much. This was a breath of inspiration, and it is going to be a fun thing. And it's about community. You know, we don't have lobbyists in DC. We writ large, even the climate movement, even at the top, they don't have enough lobbyists to counter this. The only hope is really going to be people power. And, you know, we're doing this for our children and grandchildren. So it's our communities that have to rise up, which is why the faith community is so important, because they are already in, you know, community sort of infrastructure and community relationships. All right, I'm going to pivot real quick and just do a quick few minutes about the Earth Bill planning and process. Let me screen share, and then I think that was next. Oh, I know we also have Christine. Is Christina here yet?
She's not here as far as I know, but there's so many Todds. She might be.
Christina, see if you're here, please rename yourself as you. All right, so let's see here. Do I have it? Oh, here it is. So I gave this presentation really quickly at the end of the last meeting, and it was a bit rushed, as you know. And so I'm just going to touch on a few main points now, and not all of it by any means. But as you know, we're talking about the Earth Bill Network, of course. This is all of our lead up that's going well. Here's the Earth Bill 1, Stop Our Pollution. Again, these are the elements. We're working on definitions, as you know, and clean renewable conversations happening in the electricity sector. It's interesting. And then we're making great progress on regenerative farming and big ag, which we won't be using that term, of course. It's sort of industrial agriculture, I think, is where that's headed. And we're finding definitions for regenerative practices in one of the existing bill package bills. So that's exciting because that has the support of Senator Booker and former Representative Holland, who's now the Secretary of Agriculture. And so you can see the idea. We're building this based on building blocks that already exist. We're not making our own stuff up. And because that's not a building block, really, it would just be starting from scratch, so to speak. So this is coming along well. The marketing meetings are happening, and they're excited about this idea. as I mentioned before, there's a lot of alignment among organizations in terms of this idea, at least, of having these goals. When you start to get to mandates that have, tax deduction ramifications if you don't meet them, who knows who will stick with it. But all these documents have some form or another of this kind of information. So the fact is that we might have to start, we will have to ask everyone to support something like this. And I have a meeting tomorrow with the NAACP. Felice is on at 1 o'clock. She might be here already. I'm not looking to put anybody in the spot in public, but I sent it to her in advance. And I've sent it to Food and Water Watch. And so in a day or so, or maybe by the weekend, I'll have a one-pager that sort of puts this in context with the arguments for it that you can start sharing around. That's the tax deduction hook. And the biggest piece is the movement power and potential of this. We have to find a way to explain this movement to the masses that is not completely overwhelming. And so ironically, this has been our path. We started with the All Fossil Fuels Act, which was pretty clear, but still had a lot of provisions. So it was a mouthful to explain. And then we went to the digest, which to gather everybody's ideas. And then through reading them and working with all these other coalitions and looking at their documents, this idea emerged. And it's really the core essence of a lot of pieces. So, and it has the value of being a very clear, simple demand to explain. We're going to stop our own pollution in electricity, vehicles, cement, and steel. And we're going to also change agricultural practices to soak those up and to reduce those emissions as well and to sequester carbon. It's really the cleanest argument and I'm not saying it very articulately, obviously, but you get the idea. It's very succinct compared to even the bill package. So this is what we need, and a movement has to have demands. And this I mentioned before, the real greenhouse gas reductions that will be measurable. We'll be asking Drawdown and MIT about that. Positive message, the pollution solution, putting the responsibility on humanity as a whole, our production, our consumption, our pollution. I think that'll be important to creating the zeitgeist of collective mission of a 2030 moonshot for Earth, and that we can change this together. None of the individual issues that we're lobbying for in the bill package and the more to come have enough power alone. And that's a fact. So we have to unite across sectors, and the big players out there are big oil, big ag, and big pharma, or making the chemicals, et cetera. They are united and they have leadership, and they're not confused about what their demands are, I can assure you. And they control Congress and politics. And you can even see that by the way any mandates or timelines are being avoided in terms of any discussions, domestically or internationally. Senator Kerry is going forward, and once again, mandates are not in the conversation for COP26, and so maybe we can help change that. And so these are the worst nightmare, and it would really call the question politically, and it would not just on these issues of their market power and their political power, but on control of our democracy by the people. And the climate movement presents a unique opportunity when there are so many interests converging to actually have enough people to push something like this through. And that with that, you will break the back of the grip they have on Congress. And so it just opens the door for everything else. Again, the carbon clock, and that's it. So Earth Bill 2 will be, of course, the details. We're working on all of that. I'll stop now for this. Let me see if I can get out of this and see what time it is. Oh, 1 o'clock on the dot. I think I did well. I feel like there was something more on the agenda I wanted to cover. Oh, the question about whether this is going to be, how we're going to roll this forward. I don't know myself. This is new, and we want to get in the game fast. And so by April, hopefully we'll have something firmly written. Hopefully our group will be in relative consensus. We'll have voting and discussion. We'll see how it goes. We're going to have the definitions out hopefully in a week or two for review. And it may be that we just do this as a poll to start with. We're going to poll our senators, I think maybe, and maybe the representatives, whichever, both, and just list them. Do you support this mandate? Do you support this mandate? You support that? And so we get the lay of the land. Here comes Felice in the room. So we get the lay of the land, and it's a nice sort of soft opening to ask them what their position is. They're gonna, it'll be very informative, I think, to see what kind of reactions we get. And you should keep in mind that this will be very vanguard. And this is a conversation and an element that people would rather avoid, and from what my read of the situation is. So by doing this, we'll be pushing the conversation in a very important strategic way. And if they say, no, they don't support any of these mandates, then our ask is, well, tell us how much your bill will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by. Tell us what your plan will do and who's going to build it, you know, so we can follow up with questions like that. But this will be a strong entree. Selden has also volunteered, Selden Prentice. And Selden, if you could put your email, if you feel like it, in the chat, or otherwise, we will add it to the various documents. Selden has offered to be a point person for new folks who are just getting into the meeting of your congressperson game zone, and he's offered to help guide you. So this is a wonderful contribution. If anyone else out there has really good organizing skills and wants to help keep track of folks, et cetera, most importantly, adopting your state is critical. So anyway, I've segued. I don't have my agenda in front of me, but I believe Felice is next. Welcome back, Felice. It's good to see you again. I don't see you yet, but I can
Hi,
tell you
I'm here.
So great, Felice. We didn't have a chance to debrief too much about what to talk about, but let's try to keep it. So start with whatever you think. Where do things, what's the lay of the land right now? I'm hearing talk of a $3 trillion infrastructure bill. I'm not sure how that relates to climate specifically, but if you could give us, your take on anything that's moved since last time you were here, how we're positioned, how we need to be ready to act as a movement, and any new leadership or guidance coming from the top about what we're supposed to be asking for. Anything you want to share, of course.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, well, thanks for having me back. So I'm going to cover two things. One is I'm going to talk a little bit about the infrastructure package and what we're hearing, and in terms of content and timing. And then I want to talk a little bit about how EDF, in close coordination with a number of our national partners, are organizing ourselves. And then I want to end with talking about the upcoming April recess, which is one of the longest recess periods that's really important for our work. I'm going to get to gallery so I can actually see you guys. So first, in terms of the infrastructure package. So Todd is right. What you'll probably be starting to see stories appear about a massive infrastructure bill that the Biden administration, the Biden White House, is eager to move. Similarly, those conversations are also happening on Capitol Hill with leadership both in the House, the Democratic leadership in both the House and Senate. There has not been a major investment in modernizing our infrastructure in decades. I mean, literally decades. And so, and we know that this has been a priority of the administration, or of the Biden campaign leading up to his election, and it continues to be a top priority for many for his administration and leaders of his cabinet. When we think about infrastructure, and Todd, you said, what does this have to do with climate? Let me just, I think I shared this the last month when I was here, and it was reflected in the letter that I don't know if it went around. I hope it went around. It's a policy menu that lists in detail all of the different investments that could be made in the near term that would do two things. One, it would update our infrastructure, modernize our cities, our towns, our grids, our electric grids, our transportation systems, and serve as a down payment towards driving down climate pollution. Todd, did that letter and the policy menu get around?
Yes, the one we reviewed last week, yes.
Okay.
But I haven't sent it out today again, but I could put it in the chat if I could.
Yeah, it was a PDF where it had the list of policy menus that have been presented to Capitol Hill, and and the administration. And so the infrastructure package, we don't know what the details are going to be. We don't know if there's going to be specific things like a clean electricity standard folded into the infrastructure package. But what we do know is that this is a really, really important opportunity to make, again, to drive investments in precisely those systems and sectors of the economy that are, in some cases, the largest sources of climate pollution. And so as a community, it's a really important opportunity. And it's an important opportunity in two ways. And I do apologize if I start sounding like a broken record, but I guess repetition can be a good thing. One, it's an important opportunity because if this is a priority of the White House and it's a priority of Congress, then it behooves us to help move this along, because we don't get these opportunities very often, where we see momentum in Congress and momentum from the White House to move something that is that ambitious. The price tag is phenomenal. And there is already a lot of rumbling about whether this is too big, if it's too bold, if it's too expansive and too expensive. And so, you know, our job as advocates is to continue to push hard that we need something that's this big and this bold and this ambitious. And if it comes with that price tag, we know that the money will appear in order to pay for it, or they will come up with creative ways of finding new revenue streams. So from a policy standpoint, it's really it's a really important opportunity. If we know there's going to be a key piece around transportation in this infrastructure package. Transportation is one of the largest sources of climate pollution. That's where the intersection is around what does this have to do with climate, to Todd's question. If there's a piece in there about modernizing the grid or looking at our transmission lines, what does that have to do with climate change? Well, right now, often where the wind blows is not where the people live. And we need transmission lines and we need an updated grid to move renewables from where they're being produced to where people live. So it can be bold, it can be transformative, and the vision is there. And so part of our job is to create the public momentum and public demand for something like this. Secretary Granholm in a meeting, maybe I told you this last time I was here. I don't know, the days are kind of blurring together. Secretary Granholm said in a meeting, we want this vision to be something that is so, what was the word she said? It's like, not just inspiring, but irresistible, that this is a future that's irresistible and everybody wants it. I want this in my town. I want this in my community. I want these benefits and this investment in my neighborhood. So policy wise, that's where the intersection is.
That would be great.
The politics.
I think it would be helpful if the groups, if somebody could put out a little piece, a couple page piece on these are the elements of the infrastructure piece that are going to benefit the climate movement. That would be a nice little handout for us to have. And then not to rush you, but go ahead in the next two sections.
When do you want me to wrap up? By 1:15?
Ish, yeah, that'd be fine. No rush. I mean, okay. Rush, but no rush.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of that. We're fine
okay, let me just finish this part. And then why is it important from a political and a movement standpoint? Because we want to demonstrate two things. One is that we are united in terms of our call for action and our call for this bold investment, and that we will then we will empower lawmakers to continue to be increasingly ambitious. If we don't show up for this, or if we're quiet around this, the biggest thing that they're working on, they will wonder where the movement is. And so again, success begets success. And it's really important for us to help inspire our members of Congress to be part of this transformative opportunity. So what does that have to do with the recess? I'm talking really fast. April is it's the Easter recess, Passover recess. It's a 2-week period where members of Congress are home. I know that your adopted district program is going like gangbusters. It's really exciting. Congratulations to all of you that are part of that. And this is an opportunity to pay your members a visit. Ask them a question. How do you see this infrastructure package benefiting our community? And they might say, like, we don't know yet, or you tell us, what do you think the community needs? Every member is going to want to see how this bill, this big infrastructure package, benefits their community. And this is an opportunity to touch base with them, introduce yourselves, ask them, because part of this period of time right now is a little bit of reconnaissance gathering. What are members of Congress concerned about? What investments are they hoping will be reflected in that bill? And then that information gets shared with the lobbyists, and we then help make sure that the bill is something that benefits all communities. Again, the biggest challenge we have is making sure that the bill speaks to rural America, urban America, coastal America, and inland America. It can't be something that excludes a huge sector of our economy or a sector of our population. And that's where this table that you've set or that you've gathered, Todd, is really important. So
thank you. And what are those 2 weeks? What are those dates, please?
It's March 29th through, starts March 29th, and then it's 2 weeks. And then it's pipelines. Yes, there's likely going to be a push to update pipelines. Well, you're talking about, I'm talking about distribution lines, distribution systems.
Just so you know, Felice, that's not me asking that question. Everybody's logged in with my registration today, so there's like 40
okay.
So then the last piece you were going to talk about is EDF and your partners, and
yeah. So the campaign, the climate action campaign, and working with the Coalition for Clean Energy and Healthy Communities, we've come up with basically a way to organize ourselves and think about this work in passing this ambitious infrastructure package in a really a 3-phase campaign. The campaign is the Act Now campaign. It has a longer tagline. I can circulate that afterwards. And there's really 3 phases of the campaign. First phase starts right now, and this is kind of the reconnaissance. Get to know your member, find out what they're concerned about. What are the things that they want to see in that bill, and making sure that they see that the things that they care about and are concerned about are going to be reflected in that bill. Remind them that you're there to support them and encourage them to be bold and to be part of this transformative opportunity. That stretch will be now and until early May, early to mid-May. Then we anticipate the committees are going to start actually putting pen to paper and writing legislation. In some cases, bills have already been introduced. They might get reintroduced. They might get tweaked. It's going to be expansive. It won't just be everything about climate. It will be, replacing lead service lines, which, God help us, should have been done decades ago, but still hasn't been done. So it is going to be expansive, but again, it's still going to be important. So this is also about, showing up for issues that might fall a little bit outside of climate, but again, is still about the environment and improving our public health and safety. So that's through May. Then we move into kind of go time. And this is about from basically May till late July, roughly. And in that period, members of Congress are going to want to hear and be reminded at home that we have their back, and we think this is really important. This is about getting stories in the local paper. This is about submitting letters to the editor. This is about, if you know the local radio talk show person, get to know them and talk about why this is such a transformative investment and why Congress should prioritize this. And then there's a vote. Maybe there's a vote, and hopefully there's a vote at the end of July. And then members of Congress go home for a month. And then our work gets really serious. And this is our time where we call it about winning the win. I don't know if you've ever heard of winning the win. Winning the win means that we got a big win under our belts. We got a bill passed. Hopefully, it gets to the president's desk. Members of Congress go home, and then they come home, and we welcome them with open arms and lots of praise, and public thanks, private thanks from all corners, businesses, health advocates, climate advocates, everybody in between. And that we continue to run that, what we would say, sort of, continue to reinforce and give them that positive cover all through the fall. If we do that and do it well, they will be more inclined to take the next vote on the next bill that will cross their desk. And if we do our jobs well, we will not lose the House in 2022. I can't stress enough how absolutely critical it is to give members of Congress the public support at home, because I guarantee you, when they go home in August and there's a $2 trillion bill passed, you watch the local TV stations, they will get hammered. And our job is to make sure that they are very, very well buffered by a really positive story.
All right, Felice, thank you so much. It's an interesting and exciting time that we're in. There's no doubt about it. One thing, Felice, maybe you could just speak to this, because we always talk straight about these things. We're looking at a 7-year window of more pollution before we exceed the 1.5 limit. Between 1.5 and 2 degrees, there's multiple tipping points that you forecast catastrophe for humanity and the planet. So how can, and to give activists from 16 to 85 some peace of mind, how can we tell from all this activity that's happening that we're actually bending the curve on greenhouse gases? Where is the measurement for the reduction in greenhouse gases, and who's measuring that and keeping track of that, so that by the end of this Congress we can say, okay, we've changed that trajectory, knowing that we don't know what happens after this window of opportunity. So, and then I guess I would just ask, and not to put you on the spot, because I just sent it to you earlier today, I think, or yesterday, but we have this idea of a mandates bill with specific mandates that would accelerate the timelines, give private sector markets all the assurances and confidence they need to forge ahead with massive private sector building and investment. The automobiles industry is already on board with this. I see that in your document, your letter, you reference 100% zero emission vehicles, and you say that EDF has other documents with positions on mandates. So it doesn't have to, I don't want to put you on the spot or EDF on the spot in particular today, maybe later. But so what is the deal? Are people just avoiding the mandates thing because they don't want the showdown fight with the fossil fuel companies, and which is understandable, but is that the answer? And if so, how do we know if what we're doing is actually going to save us?
Well, everything we're doing is going to save us. So I firmly believe you take every opportunity that's presented to you.
Well, yeah.
So I would say if there is an opportunity to move something, even if it feels small, we lean in and we take advantage of that opportunity. Is there measuring the reductions? Absolutely. Rhodium spends a tremendous amount of time tracking, measuring, monitoring to see where we can make the biggest reductions. In mid-April, there's going to be the International Climate Summit. Every country has to present what are their national climate targets that they're setting. And the United States will be joining, obviously, lots of other countries. And those are based on modeling. Those are based on measurements. And so there's going to be very clear information about how do we avoid the climate, sort of climate disaster, we got to, drive down emissions. We got to drive down green, carbon emissions, and we got to drive down methane emissions. And so, but everything that we're going to do is going to make a difference. The reason why, when you talk about mandates, I think that there's a colleague once described it to me is that there's sort of two ways to go about it. One is you're trying to pull clean energy and clean transportation, clean manufacturing, clean buildings. You're trying to pull that into the market. And you do that by, tax incentives and rebates and investments like this infrastructure package. Then the other one is like pushing that. And the pushing comes from regulations and, legislative hammers that might be put into place. Regulations are going to be coming. There's no question the regulations are coming. We've got a great EPA. They're going to work really hard to get those rules in place. They're just not as durable. They're going to take multiple years, and you're going to have, but they're still incredibly important. So to your point, Todd, the community is talking about both, and we're trying to do both, right? We're trying to push the stuff into the market through regulations, and our best opportunity right there in the near term is through what EPA is planning, and then pulling clean energy and clean transportation, and really supercharging U.S. manufacturing by pulling it through this infrastructure bill.
All right, well, I appreciate it. And I know we're in the crux of a complicated conversation, but to me, this is where it all just gets real clear. A clean energy standard kicks in, the utility companies have to send out procurements, the private sector kicks in and starts building. This is pulling by just telling, the source of our pollution that you have to stop buying dirty stuff and you start buying renewables. That clean energy standard or mandate, it seems like to me, it's just, it's obvious. And so if it's not being included, to me, that feels, like we're succumbing to the political resistance from the industry. And it would just be so satisfying to everyone say, okay, yeah, we put the mandate in. Everybody could take a deep breath. All of us who are, killing ourselves, scared to death, could take a deep breath if the movement started pushing just to have vehicle and utility and cement and steel mandates. The utility, these things could all fit into a reconciliation budget or infrastructure budget. So, all right, I'll stop lobbying you.
Well, I would say, so the good news is, if you think, and I can share this detail with you, there are many states that already have a renewable energy standard in place. Millions of people, 1 in 3 Americans is already getting energy from an electric utility company that's made a commitment to moving towards 100% clean energy. So that, the pivot is happening. It's maybe not happening as fast. I would just say, and Todd, you and I could just maybe disagree on this. I think walking around and talking about mandates doesn't always necessarily open doors. And so think about kind of, that might be something that we can talk about. And we talk about setting enforceable goals, enforceable standards, as a way to kind of make it very clear that this is really the goal that we have to work towards, that we have to achieve. I think that if we do a bang up job as a community between now and September, and we get a significant bill passed, which we haven't, outside of the recovery bills, we'll have wind in our sails, and we can continue to advance really, really significant opportunities. And meanwhile, we have our work cut out for ourselves in pushing for all of the rule makings that EPA will be pushing, whether it's around cars, whether it's around methane. All of those things are going to be really, really important.
Do you think they're going to go forward and put greenhouse gases, carbon, all that, and the emissions under the Clean Air Act, under that definition? Are they going to forge that forward? Is everyone supporting that? Pollutants, however it goes, I don't know the details, but I saw a piece recently that there was a petition by Food and Water Watch and Center for Biological Diversity that was denied in the Trump last minutes. and has been reversed, that denial. And so it's back on the table. That seems to be the regulatory fix. And it's just scary with a regulatory fix that in 4 years, it'll be reversed, so it's not really strong comfort either to the market, which really is going to kick in and needs to have loans to build stuff that
Well,
costs a lot of money.
you're absolutely right. And therefore that's exactly right. So that's why we are, as a community, we are really laser focused on this infrastructure bill. Because in the infrastructure bill and in that policy menu, you'll see that there's, trying to really be more expansive around clean energy tax incentives and making sure that we have rebate programs and that we're driving, again, investments precisely to those industries and really, innovative technologies that's going to drive down emissions at a much faster clip. So could not agree with you more, Todd. We might just not use the term mandates that are embedded in the infrastructure bill because politically that will just not help us keep the House. And I can't tell you guys, if we lose the House and we lose even more seats in the Senate, we're just, talk about scary. That's what makes me scared, Todd. Not whether we worry about like the nomenclature of some of the, language that we're trying to get inserted into the bill.
I hear you. And
as we
the last
get
question I'll
something
ask
to
you-
move. With that?
The last thing I would just ask you, people are asking, we have of our districts adopted, a big chunk of them are in Republican districts. So if you could come forward with, if you could give us a PDF or a document with all the benefits of the infrastructure bill, or as you see them for the climate, that'll help us. But anything else that any words of encouragement to our folks who live in Republican districts? Because this infrastructure bill is that moment where we should be able to do this, but you know how it goes.
No, I think exactly. All politics are local. So I think, first order of business, I can definitely pull up, get you any information that we're pulling together about how this helps. So I'll tell you for EDF, we're looking at it a couple of different ways. One is the abandoned wells, also known as orphan wells. So these are abandoned oil and gas wells. They are littered across the country, many in Republican heavy districts. There's a lot of support on both sides of the aisle to get money into states and localities to plug those abandoned wells. Why is that important? Because they all leak methane emissions, which is a super pollutant. It drives warming at a much faster rate than carbon emissions. So that's one where there's a lot of support. And probably the one that's most of us. The other one is modernizing the grid and overhauling the transmission lines and transmission systems, making it more resilient to extreme weather. There's a lot of support for that. And again, there's not sufficient money being set aside. There's manufacturing. There's an incentive to jumpstart U.S. manufacturing. It's called a manufacturing tax incentive. The program is called 48C. It's kind of wonky. Senator Manchin and Senator Stabenow introduced it. It's a really important bill. Senator Daines actually also co-sponsored it. This was something that was introduced 10 years ago. It was so popular. There were more people applying for it, more companies applying for it than they had money for. So this is expanding a bill that would incentivize U.S. manufacturing. A lot of support for that. So I shouldn't say a lot of support, but that's an opportunity where we have to begin to continue to build support. So lead with jobs, anything that generates jobs and that helps generate good paying jobs and modernize our economies will be important.
All right. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you. It's so wonderful to be connected. We had this vision of, opening up the conversation from the top to the grassroots, and you're just really generous and wonderful in sharing all this with us.
So I have an offer to make to you. So there's a lot of people on this call. I put in my email. If in advance of the next one, you're all reading the stories that are going to be unfolding in your communities. You're going to see the stuff that crosses your Twitter and Facebook or whatever other feeds, news feeds, Yahoo news feeds. if there's things that come that you say, like, I would like Felice to think about these issues. I can't promise I have time to cover them all, but that can also be, that might be helpful. So share, you can either share them with me directly or share them with Todd and me, and then we'll kind of, I'll try to curate them and then be a bit more focused in my thoughts in a month, or be more explicit. But in the meantime, I'll get busy with these documents so you have something to go to your district meetings with.
All right, well, that's wonderful. We're starting to feel like a community all the way around. So welcome, everybody. Thank you, everyone. I think that's
I
it
have
for
to hop,
today.
sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Bye, Felice. I'm just saying goodbye,
Bye.
everybody. Bye, Felice. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Well, I couldn't follow the chat, but looks like everyone was busy in it. As you can see, we're in the throes of everything. I'm fine with the word enforceable standards as opposed to mandates. And no, I just use that as shorthand, of course. Don't worry about the terminology. The bottom line is we need these and these bills. Anyway, we're going to keep moving forward. I think we've found the right ask. A lot of people are going to be asking for it. It's going to be value added. We'll keep trying to put that together. I can't think of anything else in a minute. Our next call, as soon as we hang up, I'll say, oh, I forgot to say this, or I forgot to say that. Oh, I don't know if Christine made it. Christine, are you here? Christina C?
I don't see her, so.
Yes, she was tentative. All right, no worries. You'll hear more about that. Save the date, July 2nd. July 2nd is what the youth and the direct action folks are talking about as a date for an action. It would be before the 4th of July weekend. And it sounds like that fits well into the schedule that we just heard about. May to July is when everything will be in the throes of everything. So that gives us April to have our first get to know you meetings, May to have broader community meetings to build out your adopted district, really find the people who know people, use all that gossipy and that I was saying the other day, a lot of people gossip and tongue wag and all that. Let's put all that to good use. Ask who knows who in your circles and find the people who like to gossip the most and ask them who they know. I don't approve of gossiping personally, but let's put it to good use. And then so July, that would be May, and then by June we'll be in full swing, I really think, and things will be going, and we'll have all sorts of meetings happening, but July 2nd will be a big action, and I think we'll be part of this game. We're in the groove, as it says, we're in the stream. We're aligning as best we can and with all these various directions. Also in June will be the U.S. Climate Action Network annual meeting, which is 185 groups, and I'm on the planning team for that annual meeting, which is where they set their plans for the next year. And so we're talking about very important things like a public facing movement, organizing by congressional district. You could imagine that I have my agenda in that conversation. Also in April, we'll be presenting at Earth Day events from earthday.org. There are two Earth Day organizations. I always get them confused, but we'll be presenting at those. And if anybody would like to help, I really need some help. There's a virtual booth, and I'm told it works like people will sort of approach your booth and Zoom windows will pop open just like you're standing there talking to somebody as they walked up to your booth in a regular convention type setting. So if anyone wants to be there to represent our work, who feels like they can navigate that technology, please let me know. And we can train new people it's actually coming up April 18th, so we don't have a lot of time. So, and then the Sunday before that, we'll be presenting as part of a forum. I'll be presenting, and supposedly that forum reached 500,000 people last year. It's a lot of people, and if so, that's why we want to be ready and all of our systems in place and everything ready to roll. And at that, I hope to be introducing the Earth Bill 1 as something that's already well in motion. All right, everybody. We also, I think that's all the help. We adopt a district. We need help for that anytime anyone wants to help shepherd folks and guide, volunteers. We'd love that. And Earth Bill. And there was one other thing. I can't remember what it was. All right, everybody. Thank you. Catherine. Oh, wonderful. Okay, great.
Question on adopt a district. Does that apply to senators also?
Yeah, we're adopting the congressional districts, and then everyone who has a congressional district within that state will then focus on the senator. And New York is virtually all adopted. It's so excited. I posted the list, and if you go to the web page or something said the quick list, and you'll see everybody and all their contacts. It's coming together beautifully. And Nancy Lawrence and Terry Michaud had a beautiful faith event last Saturday. It was really quite remarkable. And Andrew and we're cutting up pieces of it to share. And it was beautiful, and lots of people signed up from that. And so we're really on a roll, everyone. And it's all because of all of you. And the policy sectors are doing incredible work. And it's just really quite remarkable. It's a lot for me to keep up with, and I'm overwhelmed, and I'm not sure I can keep going at times, to be honest. But we're in it now, and we're going to keep going. And all of you are a reason why I keep going. I appreciate it. And just a shout out to Meryl. Hi, Meryl. Thank you for everything. Thank you all. And we'll see you at the next meeting, which is in 2 weeks on a Saturday. Well, it's on April 10th at noon. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Spread the word, spread the word. Look at the new website.